Hello there, welcome back to the third episode in Cathracasts, where we look at creating a Skyrim character who is a Redguard, and we look at how creating a character's backstory and different ways of creating that backstory and how that can help set you up for some really interesting roleplay in a role-playing game. I think this could probably be used in any variant of online role-playing or solo role-playing, whatever it is that you're doing. And I think it's a really great little exercise because the more time you invest in a character's story, the more you want to spend time with that character. And it's just a unique view at looking at storytelling for a game and different ways of doing it. Now, if you're new to my channel, I should say that there are several playlists, but there's two that I stick to the most. One is Skyrim Special Edition and Immersive Life of Cathra, who is another main character that I play both in Skyrim and in ESO, even though they're many hundreds of years apart. I'll explain how that happens in a different video. But I've also made this new stream called Hammerfell is Home. It'll probably come up with a better title than that in the near future, something like Redguard's Life. And the reason I'm making this is because we know that Bethesda are looking at bringing out a new game called Redfall, which is, well, potentially Redfall, which is Skyrim 6. And I thought in order to kind of get into this game, it would be very, very interesting to read the background of these people, try and understand their lore a little bit, try and understand a bit about their history and their past, and maybe, you know, look at their religions and their culture, so that when I come to play it, I've got a richer understanding of the environment and the people that they are. So there's been quite a few things that have helped me to get used to this. And for this video, I want to show you something that I've been doing after I had finished the last cast. This one's taking a little bit more time, but not due to how much time it takes, but the difficulty of the process. So in the last video, I talked about the fact that my character is called Cade, and that I've got an idea with his ancestors that there's something that's been passed down through his culture that he wants to obtain, and I have decided that this thing is to be found in Skyrim. Now, at the moment, the first thing that came into my head was, if these people are a noble warrior tribe, they are the Forebears. So I don't know if we'll be able to find it here, actually. We might be able to if I type in find. So there are two factions. Here we go. In the Skyrim, in Skyrim and with the Redguards, there are two factions, and you can see really they come out in the second era. Okay, and I now know that in the second era something happened with the Redguard people, and I believe some elves, where, and I'm not sure if these are the islands, but these islands sank. We don't know why, but something happened where there was a great destruction. So they came over to Hammerfell and other places, but mainly they came up here and they settled. And so what I've decided to do with my character is, when these first people came, they were the Forebears, and they were the warrior caste, really, and they brought with them the skills of the warrior to, obviously, to make a place for settling down and settlement. So I decided that one of the people over there was a descendant of Cade, a great-great-grandmother down the line, and she had a knowledge about weapons or about fighting that has been lost. And I think my story is about Cade trying to find that knowledge somewhere in Skyrim. And I thought a great way that could be done is in a scroll. So he's got to find a scroll, and then there's some knowledge. And that's one of the ideas that I've got so far. And maybe finding a sword or a shield, I don't know, something about finding his heritage, which I'm quite caught up in. And the way I came up with that idea was it was just kind of natural, actually. As you know, as you start writing the character, ideas start to pop in. But what was important for me in understanding the history was well, how long ago was it, and what does this tell me? Because originally I thought, oh, maybe great-great-grandmother. And then I found out that actually, if we're in the 4th era with the Elder Scrolls timeline, okay, so if we scroll down, this is a really nice little website. So here's Skyrim in the 4th era, 201. However, we can see that it's somewhere around here. I have got it down. That the Redguards came over, basically. And so here we go. Look, the 1st era. Sorry, look. The Redguard people arrived from the Homeland and settled around Daggerfall. So I think that I might have an inconsistent piece of evidence there. But whatever the case, my character's family didn't. So they came a bit later. So what I started to do was... Oh, I did start in the 1st era. I do apologise. Let's go back to that. Here we go. That is absolutely right. So here we go. When I found this out, I looked at how long the 1st era was, and it's very, very long. And then I looked at the 2nd and the 3rd era. They're nowhere near as long, thankfully. And the 4th era. And I thought, well, if I'm saying that Cade's great-great so-on grandmother brought this knowledge with them from their first arrival, and I didn't have Daggerfall, I actually just had Hammerfell, so I'll need to trace this up a little bit more. I thought, well, I'd better start planning the family tree here. So this was my next step, which was planning the family tree. And that's a little bit about what this video is going to be about. Now, I'm really good at making a lot of work for myself, and would I advise anyone else to do this, and what did I get from doing this? Because that's really what this is about. I really enjoyed it up until a point, and I'll see if I can explain that point in a moment. So the first thing I did is I made this family tree on pieces of paper and started to work out the ages of the different people. And then doing it in Excel was good up until when I got to about line 150 odd, because it transpires that Excel, when you copy and paste too much, it starts to lag heavily. So from about row 199 downwards, every time I entered any cell at all, it crashed. So it became a real chore, actually, and I almost kind of gave up, but I was so stubborn that I got so far, I carried on. And I had all this stuff on paper anyway. So I just want to take you through this as long as it doesn't crash. And if it does crash, it doesn't really matter, because it's the process that matters. And what I'm going to do is try and transfer this into something that is a little bit more user-friendly on the internet, so you guys can explore it too. So I can see that at the moment it's not going to load all the way down. It's absolutely fine, because I can tell you about how it works anyway. We can see at the top that it says it's not responding. But what I was able to do is I was able to start Cade's family life right from the beginning. It does this, the flashing, by the way. It will stop soon. And start with, I knew it was going to be a grandmother of some sort, and start with her line. And what was interesting for me doing this was, yes, it took an awful lot of time to do it, but it was great being able to chase down his family line between the men here and the women who carried on his line and his blood. So what did I get from this? Why did I do it? And what is it telling us? So hopefully this will be uploaded and interacted for you to look at your pleasure, and I can tell you about how I'm going to use it at a later time when I've sorted it out. But here you can see that we've got the women and the men that were part of Cain's heritage. If there's a line at the top connecting them, that means they're siblings. So you can see that Clessa here had 3 children. She had 2 sons and a daughter, and this time it was the son that carried on the line. These will have had children, but you can imagine that making a family tree that big would be ridiculous. And then a dotted line means marriage or a relationship of some sort. So you can see that at some point they have been married, or they've had a relationship of some kind, and then we can see when they were born and when they died. Now, what was really interesting about doing this that I hadn't thought about was, I thought it's just going to be a bunch of dates that I put in, and that's kind of it. I'm just going to trace the family line that way. But what I found very interesting was the process of coming up with names. So I just want to show you about that, because it was a really great thing to do. I've done it before in other ways. And that was using this website, which is run by Emily. I need to find out who Emily is, by the way, and chase her down, because it's been a really helpful site. So Emily here has got lots of different character races, and when you click on them, it randomly generates a name. I don't know how she's done this, but it's super, because what happened is you're able to just click on male names, and it randomly just gives you a ton of names to work from, and it's the same with female names. So true to style, most of them don't have surnames. They mostly have just first names, which is what you find when you read about the Redguards. It talks about not many of them have a second name. So I wanted to stick with that, and also it meant there was less space for me to write. So let's go right up to the top. So I started with Safia. That was one of the first names that cropped up on the website when I was clicking names. There's Safia again, but it was spelt the way I've used it. And then as I created Safia and her children, I started to pay a lot of attention to the names that were not invested via marriage. So the names that were brought in, this should be changed, this won't be this when it's done, it'll be a different name. That's just a pure mistake on my behalf, although it's a nice enough story saying these people are the same name. It happens in families sometimes. What happened was these names remained mostly the same, especially Safia and Kral. And these seem to be names that wanted to be passed down through the family. Lots of others do too, but I started to understand that this was a family that saw a name as an important part of the heritage. And I think I got a little bit of that from my own family heritage. So, in my family, my father and his father passed down part of their names through our names, not first names, but middle names. And I wanted this to be first name because they only had that. So you'll see that Safia turns up more than once, and you'll see that's completely on purpose. And that's because, I don't know what I want to do with it yet, but that's because there's something in the power of these names that the family feels important to pass on. And so what was nice about this is I had to scroll up and down and say, Safia needs to happen again. So here you can see Rial, Niasa, and Taliek, and Safia again, and Safia again. But that's on purpose. That's because the mother is passing her name on to her daughter. And Kral has turned up again, and that happened a lot. But what I didn't see happening was this. I think this is the first time that Cade appears. So Cade appears in the mid 1600s of the First Era, and it's really cool kind of thinking. I was coming along and I was thinking, I've got to think of another male name. And at this point I went, yeah, Cade's going to turn up. And I don't know why Cade turns up there, because it's not been passed down as far back as we can see. Maybe it's further back, but there's something in the name there that struck with Taliek and Bluetty and their family. So Cade came in here. Maybe it's Bluetty that passed it on through her family, who knows. But Cade then started to turn up a lot more, as well as Kral. You can see here it is, Kral. So some names kind of weathered the storm of history and remained, and that was something I never saw happening at all, that I really liked. In the same way that as I was planning, here we go, this time you've got Kral and Taliek, and they are and Kral here, these are huge families, and there are 9 siblings in these two families. And this was because, the story of the seventh son of the seventh son. I wanted something here that kind of had, the the seventh daughter of the seventh daughter or something like that. Something in the past that I could bring into Cade's story later on. I don't know what yet, because I need to read more about the Redguard and their people. So although I haven't finished, I've got the second era and the third era to fill in. It was certainly a really, and the fourth era, certainly a really interesting exercise. And the only reason maybe I wouldn't advise someone else to do it is, or not to do it in Excel, is, as I say, it got really laggy after enough copy and pasting. But the next step now in Cade's story is to finish off the timeline, and then to start just attaching some events from the Redguard people specifically to that timeline in some way that gives me an idea of Cade's backstory a little bit more, and what I know about them. You know, maybe not why they came over, but maybe a little bit more about the first era and the family as a bunch of the forebears and the sword singers, and take it from there. So there might be some writing actually next time, a bit of story writing that kind of is something that tells us about their family. But it really is a special thanks to the name generator website by Emily, which you can see is Fantasy City Name Generators, which just was extremely helpful. And maybe it's worth doing a little shout out to the fact that the whole idea kind of came from finding this random family tree that I saw. But what I like about this, and I'm thinking about doing this, is can you see that some of them have photographs? And I did think, going back to my own timeline, wouldn't it be cool if on these ones here, the ones where the bloodline is being passed down, whether I could attach to the right of it or something a screenshot from ESO where I randomly generate the faces of these characters and put them in. But I don't know how to do that to a point where I'm not going to lose my sanity, basically, because that's what I'd be worried about. It'd have to be a little attachment we could hang over. But I do like that idea to start to put faces to the names of these people. Anyway, that's how I started to create Cade's family tree. I realise it's probably borderline maniacal, and certainly borderline obsessive in organising an idea, but I'm enjoying the process. I've not done it like this before. I've usually written a short backstory, but I found in doing it, I really am invested a bit more in Cade already, and I don't really know anything about him at the moment. Also, he's not going to be as old as I thought. I want him to be old enough to sire children so that he can pass down his line, because this is important. So maybe mid-30s, early 40s. I know he could be older, but I don't want him to be at the moment. I'm not sure yet. I'm still playing around with that idea. Anyway, thank you very much for watching that video, and I hope you found it vaguely interesting. And as I say, this has taken about a week to do, but it only took so long because Excel started crashing at some point. If you randomly watch this and you know how to make this interactive on the internet in some way via a website or something where it's not going to be clunky and it's going to be quite smooth, do let me know. That would be amazing. Thank you very much for watching. Take care.